Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is August the 9th, 2024. It has been 3,847 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 170 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and 2 years and 167 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression. Today's podcast covers the events that happened on Thursday and Friday morning. You will find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. There is a link in the podcast description. There are a lot of map updates today. The Russia-Ukraine War Report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. There aren't many changes from yesterday, so if you want to skip ahead, I won't mind. I won't even know. 1. Ukrainian forces do not have enough resources to defend Donetsk, New York and the approaches to Pokrovsk and Selidove, and we maintain that the combat potential of the troops deployed in the Kursk region is not significant enough to change that outcome. 2. Russia will achieve the operational goal of capturing Donetsk and New York in 2024, and we further assess that for Ukrainian forces an extended battle in an urban environment is ill-advised. 3. We maintain that Ukraine's inability to re-establish air parity is enabling the Russian aerospace forces to provide almost uncontested close air support, forcing Ukrainian troops to withdraw as defensible positions are destroyed. 4. Despite the battlefield situation, Russian losses of armor, mobility and personnel continue at an unsustainable level, and the indiscriminate use of light infantry, regardless of losses, is significantly contributing to Russia's ongoing battlefield success. 5. The Russian economy is weaker than reported. 6. Persistent delays in the delivery of promised military hardware, munitions and funding continue to prevent the Ukrainian armed forces from reaching their full combat potential. 7. We maintain the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. 8. The policy of escalation management implemented by the NATO alliance and the United States, and to a small extent Germany, is a failure. We assess that the risk of a serious international incident is increasing due to Moscow's belief that NATO is unlikely to respond. 9. Russia will continue to commit increasingly worse violations of international humanitarian law until international watchdogs and Ukraine's allies take a unified and firm stance. 10. In our assessment, Russia will restart sustained attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure by October, continuing Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 4 arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. 11. The attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have incrementally increased the chance of an intentional nuclear accident at multiple nuclear power plants. Once again, I'm starting with the action report summary because of the amount of work our team is doing to understand the situation in the Kursk region. On Thursday, Russia carried out 101 discrete assaults in Ukraine, and through August the 8th, the 7-day moving average for daily attacks dropped to 122, down 24% from the July the 4th peak. The moving average is now at the lowest level since June the 18th. The VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, carried out 73 airstrikes, dropping 89 bombs on civilian and military targets, almost one-third on the Sumy Oblast. Russian ground forces carried out over 4,700 fire missions with tubed and barrel artillery. The decline of the number of Russian attacks after Ukraine launched the Kursk offensive is dramatic. At this time, there is no evidence that the two are connected. Russian forces could be in a planned operational pause, conducting troop rotations or consolidating recent gains to secure their ground lines of communications better, that's G-Log supply lines, where rapid gains were made. The biggest action continues to be in the Kursk Oblast of Russia. This would be a good time to open up the war map on a second device and find the city of Sumy, that's in the northeastern part of Ukraine. There is a link to the map in the podcast description. Ready? Here we go. Ukrainian forces have advanced in multiple directions in the last 24 hours. Because of how far and fast troops are moving, our analysts have created a new area of operation, or AO, in the Kursk Oblast of Russia. Additionally, for the first time, Ukrainian forces have started sharing pictures and videos, enabling our team to confirm Ukrainian advances. All of the pictures and videos I reference are linked in our daily situation report. There is more information in the podcast description on how you can become a subscriber for as little as $5 a month and support independent journalism. We begin in the Korenevo AO. The presence of Ukrainian forces in Dar'yino, Lyubimovka, Zelený Shlях and Обуховка was visually confirmed. Russian sources claimed that there were skirmishes in Snagost, Kremyanaya and Olgovka, but didn't provide any evidence. A Russian video showed that Ukrainian troops were further north of Zelený Shlях than previously assessed, and the map was adjusted. In Russian-controlled Oktyabrskaya, east of Rylsk, a Russian military convoy was attacked by rockets fired by HIMARS with submunitions. Local residents shared a video of the aftermath and reported ammunition was cooking off. After the strike, the acting governor of the Kursk Oblast, Alexei Smirnov, announced a voluntary evacuation order for the Rylsk district. The attack occurred 35 kilometers from the Ukrainian border and 34 kilometers from the closest Ukrainian troops. On Friday morning, a video showed that 8 military trucks and 1 UAZ-452 Lov had been destroyed and 6 more military trucks were damaged. Several of the trucks were filled with dead Russian soldiers, with some bodies lying on the ground. Russian sources claimed, quote, "An entire battalion was destroyed. Judging by the appearance of the column, about half were killed. This is one of the bloodiest and most massive strikes in the entire war." Yesterday, during a press conference, the Deputy Press Secretary for the Department of Defense, Sabrina Singh, was asked if Ukraine's offensive into the Kursk Oblast was, quote, "escalatory." She responded, quote, "We don't feel this is escalatory in any way. Ukraine is doing what is necessary to be successful on the battlefield." In a separate press conference, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was also asked about potential escalation and if the Ukrainian offensive was an indication that US policy had changed. Quote, "We have to remember that obviously in this region there's Russian troops there. They are in a region of Russia, and they're in that region attacking Ukraine. And so we can't forget that." In the Sudzha AO, Ukrainian forces were visually confirmed in Novoivanovka, Leonidovo, Alexandria and east of Malaya Loknya, near Russkaya Porечная. Russian sources claimed that fighting was ongoing in Malaya Loknya. Russian sources also claimed, without evidence, that Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance units, or DRG, probed as far north as Kromsky Byki and Cheremoshki, 15 kilometers south of Lugov, and reported skirmishes in Anastasievka and Ivnitsa. Ukrainian troops were also visually confirmed in Sverdlikova and Lebedevka. In the area of Sudzha, videos confirmed that Ukrainian forces were in Gogolevka, Goncharovka and First Knyazhy. Russian sources accused Ukrainian troops of shooting at a civilian car near the R200 highway north of Mirny. The vehicle was not hit and no one was injured. No troops were visible in the video, which captured the sound of short bursts of nearby gunfire. The interchange of the R200 and P200 highway had anti-tank landmines in several locations. It was also claimed there was fighting on the edge of Bondarevka, where local residents found packaging from Ukrainian field rations. North of Sudzha, Russian sources claimed Ukrainian forces had reached Kazachye Lokhnya. They also claimed that Ukrainian DRG advanced on the R200 highway, reaching as far north as Shagarovo, 54 road kilometers from the city of Kursk. A skirmish was also reported in Bolshoye Soldatskoye. In northeastern Sudzha, near the MiG-29 statue, another video showed that the roads had been mined, with one vehicle destroyed. Russian forces likely mined the roads, as Ukrainian troops would not mine their own G-Log and were visually confirmed south of the location. Multiple Russian sources claimed that Ukraine captured Sudzha, while others reported that only the west side was under Ukrainian control. We coded the settlement as contested. Russian propagandist Alexander Sasha Kots attempted to drive to Sudzha but saw a drone, turned around and drove away at a high rate of speed. We geolocated the incident in Martinovka, 5 kilometers north of where Ukrainian forces had been visually confirmed. There was a fire near where he turned, and at the end of the video it appears that there was drone debris on the road. Russian state media agency Izvestia released a video showing a Ukrainian 2S-1 Gvozdika 122mm self-propelled howitzer in Yuzhny, 10 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. A Lancet drone targeted the SPG, but the video ended without providing a battle damage assessment. Moving to assessment. The movement of heavy artillery into the Kursk Oblast indicates that Ukraine intends to occupy and defend the areas they've captured. Additionally, as by military doctrine one would not bring an SPG to the forwardmost line of friendly troops, Ukraine's advances are much deeper than currently assessed. At the time of recording, the analyst team was working on their terrain analysis.
You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War Podcast. Our team of journalists, researchers, and analysts is funded by readers, listeners, and viewers just like you. To support independent journalism, please consider becoming a patron. You can find us on patreon.com/Malcontent News.
In the last 24 hours, based on geolocation and Russian and Ukrainian reports, Ukraine expanded the area it controls from 182 square kilometers to 427. This includes a large, mostly forested area south of Sudzha between the Ukrainian border and the Psel River. It expands to 709 square kilometers when the areas Russian sources claim are under Ukrainian control are included. Ukraine released a new video showing that before advancing at the Sudzha border crossing, the complex was heavily shelled and attacked by one-way drones. The garrison of 40 Federal Security Service of Russia border guards surrendered without a fight. The Russian troops were processed, loaded into trucks, and brought to Ukraine. Frustration, fear, and at times panic were spreading among the civilian population. Evacuees from Sudzha were being bussed to Moscow and Kursk. One woman appeared on Russian state media and accused the Russian commanders of not giving orders to shoot at Ukrainian troops. Quote, "They don't give a command to shoot. Guys see, and they don't give a command to shoot. They don't. They lie on TV. Lies, lies, lies. Bastards lie." In the city of Kursk, hundreds of people stood in line to receive humanitarian aid. One woman begged for autocrat Vladimir Putin to help. Quote, "Where is our government? They are destroying everything there. You probably don't know anything, but it's scary what's happening." As word spread about Ukrainian DRG units approaching Lvov, residents started to evacuate, and long lines formed at gas stations. Later in the day, Russian officials in Lvov advised residents that evacuations by bus to Kursk and Moscow had been suspended due to a petrol and diesel fuel shortage. Moscow Railways announced that passenger service between the Psel station in Giryi, Sudzha and Korenevo had been suspended. They left out the part about Ukraine occupying most of Sudzha. Adding to the confusion, acting Governor Smirnov reported that internet service providers were knocked offline by a cyber attack. In a video, autocrat Putin announced that any person who had to evacuate in the Kursk Oblast would receive a one-time payment of 10,000 rubles. That's about $115. The video has English subtitles and is a must-watch. The usually firm, polished and confident Putin appeared tired, nervous and stumbled through his statement with many ums and ahs. Are things not going to plan? Russian mail bloggers continued to report that Ukrainian forces were using electronic warfare and that secure communications between Russian military units were, quote, non-existent. Ukrainian and Russian sources reported that if Ukrainian troops met resistance, they flanked the defending Russian soldiers because they did not have any defensive positions and were disorganized. Russians are raising questions about what happened to the $173 million that was allocated to the Kursk Oblast government to build static defenses. In November 2022, former Kursk Oblast Governor Roman Starovoyt, now the Minister of Transportation of Russia, claimed that the first two echelons were completed and the third was being constructed. It is unclear what forces Russia plans to use to counter the Ukrainian offensive. Multiple Russian social media accounts claimed that private military company Wagner Group mercenaries under the Africa Corps were being redeployed from Africa and Belarus. The accepted leader of the defunct mercenary group, Alexander Ratibor Kuznetsov, denied the claim through the commander of the Vostok V Air Assault Brigade, saying, quote, "The information that the Wagner Group is taking part in protecting the state border is not true." Commander of Chechen Ahmad forces, Aptia Laudinov, denied that his forces retreated when Ukraine breached the border and insisted they were still occupying their positions. Hours later, he claimed that there was only one line of defense on the border and that the Russian troops staffing them, quote, had no forces, means or resources. Ukrainian operational security continues to be absolute. In the Sumy Oblast of Ukraine, Russia carried out 16 airstrikes, dropping 23 bombs. In the village of Mogritsa, 2 glide bombs struck a school, killing 2, including a 6-year-old girl. Another civilian was wounded by a bombing of the city of Sumy, and 4 more were injured in Khotin. There has not been a notable increase in the number of artillery, mortar and rocket attacks, despite the ongoing Kursk offensive. Here is what happened in other parts of Ukraine, starting in the Kharkiv Oblast. In the Liptsev-Vovchansk AO, fighting continued in Vovchansk, with no significant changes to the situation. In the Kupiansk AO, Russian forces attempted to advance towards Sinkivka, northeast of Petropavlivka, and in the direction of Glushkivka from occupied Peshchane. None of the attacks were successful. In the Luhansk Oblast AO, Russian forces continued their attacks on the eastern edge of Makiivka and in the direction of Nevske and Terny, with no change in the situation. Fighting also continued in the eastern part of the Serebryansky forest. Now let's talk about the Donbass and the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. In the Siversk AO, Russian forces tried to advance in the direction of Verkhnyokamyenske, into western Spirne, and towards Ivano-Darivka and Pereizne, without success. In the Kostantinivka AO, Ukrainian forces maintained their defensive lines on the western edge of Kalinivka, the canal district of Chasiv Yar, and the forested areas west of Ivanivska. Ukrainian forces also held their defensive lines in the Toretsk-New York AO. Russian attacks in New York, Western Pivnichne, and between Zalizne and Toretsk were repulsed. Russian forces carried out intense attacks in the direction of Panteleimonovka. At the time of the recording, we did not have information about the outcome. In Southwestern Donetsk Oblast, in the Pokrovsky Yo, Russian forces only made marginal gains. Assaults on the eastern edge of Vozdvizhenka and north of occupied Novoalexandrivka were repulsed. Russian troops did advance from occupied Vesele, the one west of Progress, in the direction of Grodivka on the T511 highway, reaching the outskirts of the settlement. Russian forces did a picture report in the southern part of Serhiivka, holding their flag. While the picture doesn't prove the settlement has been captured, in our assessment, Russia controls Serhiivka. Fighting continued in Ivanivka, on the edge of Zhelanne and north of Mazhove. Further south, Russian forces continued their attempts to advance past Yasnobrodivka without success. There were no new territorial changes in the Kurakhove Yo, where the intensity of fighting remained low. Russian forces remained stuck between Netailove and Karlivka, and fighting continued near the Lozova River in Krasnogorivka and on the southeastern outskirts of Kostiantynivka. In the Vuhledar Yo, fighting was reported east of the T532 highway near Vodyane and in the area of Mikilske. We're going back to Russia for an update on the Russian front beyond the Kursk Oblast. In the Lipetsk Oblast, waves of Ukrainian drones attacked electrical infrastructure and the Lipetsk military airfield, a primary operations base for the Su-34's bombing Ukraine and home of the Russian Knights aerobatic demonstration team. The ammunition depot on the northern edge of the military base was hit, creating a massive explosion that broke windows and blew doors open. Ammunition, including bombs, air-to-ground and air-to-air missiles, cooked off for hours. Lipetsk Oblast Governor Igor Artamonov declared a state of emergency, ordering businesses to allow people to work from home and suspending all public events. The settlements of Koptseve Hutara, Fyodorovka, Tynkovka, and Sintsova were evacuated due to exploding ammunition. NASA firms indicated that the ammo depot between the main runway and the village of Koptseve Hutara was hit. On Friday morning, a second wave of Ukrainian drones was attacking the city. Belgorod Oblast Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov reported that 29 one-way drones attacked the region. Windows were broken and roofs damaged in Stary Oskol, and 4 drones hit an apartment building in Shebekino. In Novy Oskol, a drone attack struck a warehouse at an industrial facility, causing a fire. And that's what we know. Our analyst team will be working through the weekend due to the activity in the Kursk Oblast. If you want to stay informed, you can become a subscriber to our Patreon. There is more information in the podcast description. Join me again on Monday. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.